The sky above Earth was not blue anymore. It was a deep, bruised crimson, streaked with the fading trails of what had once been orbital fire. The atmosphere hummed faintly, an echo of radiation and memory. For 50 years, no voice had risen from the planet. No signal. No life. The galaxy had declared it dead. Then, one morning, a pulse rippled through the void. It began beneath the ruins of what was once Geneva, deep within the granite roots of the planet. The air inside the vaults was still and dry, preserved by machinery that hadn't seen human touch in half a century. Cryotubes lined the chamber like coffins, and within them, the last warriors of Earth slept in silence. Their veins glowed faintly silver beneath their skin, their bodies stronger, their minds bound by code and purpose. At precisely 6 o'clock Universal Time, the first tube hissed open. Commander Alara Voss gasped awake. Frost bloomed across her eyelashes as she sat upright, drawing in her first breath of living air in 50 years. Her body trembled, but not from cold. Her nervous system had been reforged with nanite filaments, humming quietly under her flesh. She stared into the sterile light until memory crashed over her like a wave. The fire. The screams. Her son's small hand, slipping from hers as the bombardment fell. Alara clenched her fists until her knuckles cracked. "Vault status," she whispered. A voice, smooth and mechanical, replied through the intercom. "All Chimera units stable. Power systems restored. Surface scans confirm minimal biological activity. No human transmissions detected." She stepped out of her pod, bare feet touching the cold metal floor. Around her, the others began to stir, 12 figures, all altered, all forged from the wreckage of extinction. Their eyes gleamed faintly in the dim light, different shades of inhuman brilliance, silver, gold, violet. "Welcome back, Commander," said a tall man with a scar running down his jaw. Rian, her second in command. His voice held no warmth, only precision. "Are we still human?" Alara didn't answer. She stared at the long, sealed tunnel ahead, the passage that led to the surface. For 5 decades, the world above had been left to rot. Yet the thought that it might still exist was unbearable in its beauty. "We find out," she said finally. "Open the gates." The massive doors began to grind apart. Dust cascaded from their edges. The air that rushed and smelled of metal, ash, and strange pollen. Alara shielded her eyes as light stabbed through the widening gap, real light, sunlight diffused through the red sky. They stepped out into a world reborn from death. What had once been a city was now a skeleton. Twisted towers leaned like broken teeth, wrapped in vines that pulsed faintly with bioluminescent veins. Alien flora had claimed the ruins, glowing softly in the mist. The silence was immense, disturbed only by the wind whispering through shattered glass. Rian knelt beside the cracked pavement and pressed his palm to the ground. "Radiation's lower than projected. Atmospheric readings show stability. Nature adapted faster than we thought." "Nature always does," Alara said. She scanned the horizon, her gaze catching on the distant shape of what might once have been an orbital defense tower, now nothing more than a spine of rust piercing the sky. "Signal our systems. I want the orbital array online." The command was unnecessary. The others were already moving, silent, efficient, more like instruments than soldiers. Within minutes, a signal bloomed from the vault network, piercing the ionized atmosphere and reaching for orbit. Miles above, in the cold vacuum of space, a Varkan scout ship detected the anomaly. On its bridge, a creature of glassy blue skin and segmented armor tilted its head as the console began to pulse. "Organic energy spike. Origin Sol 3, it said in a voice like grinding stone. The captain, smaller yet more ornate, glanced at the readings. "Impossible. The human world was sterilized. Then the dead have learned to scream." They turned their vessel toward Earth. Back on the surface, Alara stood on the edge of a crumbling overpass, watching the horizon shimmer with dust. The red sky seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat. For the first time in half a century, she could hear the sound of wind, unfiltered by metal walls. Rian joined her, helmet under his arm. If the Varkan detect us, they'll send a fleet. We're not ready for that. We're not hiding, Ilara said. Not anymore. He studied her face for a moment. You think vengeance will make you feel human again? I think survival is the only thing that ever did. He smirked faintly. Then let's remind the galaxy what that means. The scout ship entered low orbit by dusk. From the ruins, faint blue glows appeared, chimeras powering their systems, syncing with the atmosphere. Ilara crouched beside a fallen statue, watching the ship's shadow slide across the broken earth. Positions, she murmured. Rian's voice echoed through the neural link, in place. 12 chimeras vanished into the ruins. The scout ship descended slowly, its thrusters sending cyclones of dust spiraling across the wasteland. A ramp unfolded, and 3 Varkan soldiers emerged, their exosuits hissing. They carried plasma rifles and moved with mechanical grace. Ilara waited until they were 30 meters away. Then, she whispered, "Now." The ground erupted. Rian leapt from the rubble, striking with impossible speed. His hands tore through armor like paper. Another chimera hurled a metal beam through the third alien's chest. The skirmish lasted less than a heartbeat. When silence fell again, the air reeked of scorched ozone and alien blood. Ilara approached the wrecked ship. Inside, the pilot was still alive, dragging itself toward the console. Its translucent skin shimmered with panic. She stepped over the debris and knelt beside it. "Tell your regent," she said softly, her voice cutting through the static. "Earth breathes." The alien stared up at her, uncomprehending. Ilara pressed her hand against its chest and released a pulse of energy. The creature convulsed, and then it was still. Outside, the chimeras gathered amid the wreckage. Rian looked at her. "You think they'll understand the message?" "They don't need to understand," Ilara said. "They only need to remember what fear feels like." Above them, the ship's distress beacon ignited, a flare of blue fire streaking into the heavens. Ilara lifted her gaze to the stars, where the Varkan fleet would soon see the signal. Her reflection shimmered in the visor's tint, eyes glowing silver, face streaked with soot and blood. 50 years of silence had ended. Humanity's first words back to the stars were written in fire. And somewhere beyond that red horizon, in the endless night, the monsters of Earth had begun to stir. The message reached the stars faster than sound reached Earth's skies. Within hours, the Varkan Dominion knew the unthinkable: humans had returned. And they were killing again. In the silent chambers of the Dominion flagship Oblivion's Edge, High Regent Xylan stood before the projected image of Earth, his long, crystalline fingers clasped behind his back. His face, a smooth mask of pale blue glass, reflected no emotion. Around him, lesser commanders murmured in disbelief. "Impossible," one said. "The surface was sterilized. 3 billion eradicated. Nothing could survive. Nothing human could." Xylan corrected, his voice calm, metallic. "Perhaps they became something else." He raised one finger, and the hologram zoomed on the signal trail emitted by the dying scout. A faint echo of human code pulsed within the transmission. It was not random. It was deliberate. A heartbeat turned into a message. "Tell your regent, Earth breathes." Xylan's lip curled. "Then let us remind them what happens when the dead defy their graves." On Earth, the survivors had already moved. Commander Ilara Vos stood on a cliff overlooking the ruins of what had once been the Atlantic coast. The water was black now, laced with metallic ash. Above, storm clouds glowed faintly green with the residue of orbital debris. Her armor's sensors tracked the approaching weather front, but her thoughts were elsewhere, on the coordinates transmitted by their reactivated satellite grid. Alien ships were converging in deep orbit. The counterattack would come soon. Behind her, Rian approached, his footsteps soundless against the gravel. "The satellite link is stable. We've reconnected 3 old orbital guns. The others are still buried." Ilara nodded. 3 is enough. We only need them to know we can still bite." He hesitated, studying her face. "You're different since the awakening." "Everyone's different," she said without looking at him. "No, I mean you feel different." The serum. Don't. She cut him off sharply. Don't make this about the serum. He folded his arms. It's exactly about that. We're not the people who went into those vaults. You gave us something you barely understood. You made us weapons, Alara. You didn't ask if we wanted to be. Her jaw tightened. The wind howled between the rusted skeletons of ruined towers. Would you have preferred extinction? Rian's eyes glowed faintly gold in the gloom. Extinction would have been honest. For a long moment neither spoke. The sea hissed and boiled in the distance. Finally Alara said, You think I wanted this? You think I sleep easy knowing what I made you into? She turned toward him, eyes flashing silver. The day I injected that serum into my own veins, I stopped being human too. But someone had to do it. Rian said nothing. His silence wasn't agreement, it was grief. 2 nights later, the first wave of the Varkan came. Dozens of destroyers burned through the upper atmosphere, raining down like cold comets. The air sizzled as energy fields tore through the clouds. From the deep forests and ruined cities, the chimeras moved into position, their neural links weaving a silent web across miles. Alara stood in the command bunker beneath the shattered remains of old New York, eyes fixed on the holographic map. Positions confirmed. Power the arc cannons. Wait for my mark. The alien ships descended lower, scanning the terrain with shimmering blue light. Rian's voice came through the link. We're in range. Hold, Alara said. Seconds passed. The air pressure shifted. Then, in a single heartbeat, she whispered, Now. The sky exploded. 3 orbital defense towers, rusted but alive, flared with lightning. Energy lanced upward, striking the lead destroyer. It shattered instantly, fragments tumbling in fire. The others scattered, firing plasma into the ruins below. Alara's command center shook violently. Concrete dust rained from the ceiling. Return fire! Outside, the chimeras surged through the wreckage. They were faster than before, their movements fluid and terrifying. One hurled a fusion grenade into a landing craft. Another leapt onto an alien walker, tearing through armor with clawed gauntlets. Rian was everywhere, his movements a blur of silver light. When the last ship fell, the night glowed with fire. But victory came at a cost. Half the human fighters were dead or dying. The battlefield stank of ozone and blood. Rian stood in the ruins, trembling, his arms slick with alien fluid. His breathing came ragged and uneven. Alara found him beside a collapsed bridge. You did well, she said quietly. He turned toward her, his expression unrecognizable. Did I? Look around you. They were ours. She followed his gaze, and saw human corpses scattered among the aliens, some twisted by friendly fire. Her throat went dry. Rian's voice cracked. I couldn't stop. Once it started, it didn't matter who they were. I felt everything. The hunger. The power. You held the line, she said, forcing calm. He stepped closer, eyes blazing. You don't get it. You made us this. You think you can still command what you don't control? Alara didn't flinch. Then control it yourself. Or let it consume you. Rian's fists clenched. Maybe that's what you want, to see what happens when your monsters lose their leashes. Maybe, she said softly. Maybe I just want to know if there's anything human left inside us. The silence that followed was heavy and raw. Then Rian turned away, vanishing into the smoke. Hours later, Alara stood alone on a ridge above the ruined harbor. Lightning flickered across the clouds. The enemy fleet had retreated beyond the moon's orbit, regrouping. But they would be back, and stronger. Her comlink buzzed. Incoming transmission, said the AI, voice crisp and synthetic. Source, Varkan Dominion. Alara's heart tightened. Open it. The hologram that materialized before her was vast and cold. High Regent Xylan's crystalline face filled the projection, his expression almost serene. Commander Voss, he said, his tone disturbingly calm. How curious. Humanity's ghost speaking through the ashes. Alara stood tall, hands behind her back. You came to our world uninvited. You slaughtered our people. You call this curiosity? I call it correction, Xylan replied. Your species was a flaw in the design. You spread without order, without logic, without restraint. We did you a kindness. 3 billion dead is not kindness, she said. It was mercy, he countered. What comes next is justice. The transmission cut. Elara stared at the empty space where his image had been. The cold wind whipped her hair against her face. Beneath the surface calm, rage stirred like magma. She turned to the horizon, where faint blue lights flickered beyond the clouds, the Varkan armada forming above the moon. She whispered, Justice works both ways. By dawn, the chimeras had regrouped. The surviving soldiers, bloodied, half mechanical, barely standing, waited for orders. Elara addressed them from the broken steps of an ancient monument, her voice echoing through the ruined plaza. They think we're extinct, she said. They think death defines us. But we define death. We don't die easy, and we don't stay buried. Her soldiers stood taller, their eyes alight with grim fire. We lost billions, Elara continued. We lost families, cities, futures. But what we became, this strength, this fury, isn't a curse. It's evolution. And tomorrow, when they come again, they'll learn what the last humans learned long ago. Rian stepped from the crowd, face shadowed, eyes dim. And what's that? That monsters can love their home too, she said. A ripple went through the soldiers, half sorrow, half defiance. Above them, the clouds parted briefly, revealing the cold shimmer of the stars. Somewhere beyond that light, the Varkan fleet was gathering, and Earth's heartbeat thudded louder through the void. The silence of 50 years was over. The blood between stars had just begun to flow. The stars above Earth bled with fire. The Varkan armada had arrived. Thousands of ships hung in the stratosphere, dark silhouettes against the burning horizon. Each vessel pulsed with blue veins of plasma, their formation tight, disciplined, merciless. From the ground, it looked as though the sky itself had cracked open. Commander Elara Vos stood in the command nexus deep beneath the ruins of Old London, her hands resting on a holographic map alive with shifting red and blue icons. Around her, technicians and chimeras worked in silence, the hum of machines filling the underground vault. Every second, more enemy signals appeared. Estimate? She asked. Her AI's voice came through the speakers, calm despite the chaos. 1,727 capital ships. Estimated troop deployment 4 million. Rian's voice cut in from the forward bunker. They're dropping carriers already. They'll hit the northern hemisphere first. Elara's jaw tightened. They want to erase us fast. Then let's make them regret trying. She nodded once, tapping the console. Initiate Aegis core preparation. Full charge sequence. We hold the surface until it's ready. A deep tremor rolled through the base as generators came online, ancient reactors reawakening after half a century of silence. The walls vibrated like the heartbeat of a living creature. Above them, the first bombardment began. The sky became a sheet of flame. Entire continents lit up as plasma fire rained down. Towers melted into rivers of metal. The oceans boiled at the edges. But from beneath the destruction, human counterfire roared back, old defense satellites reactivated, orbital guns hidden beneath cities unleashed their fury. Elara's command feed filled with reports. Southeast perimeter holding. Chimera squads in position. Casualty rate rising, but morale intact. She rose from her console and looked toward the heavy blast doors. The time for coordination was over. It was time to fight. Rian, she said through the comlink. I'm heading topside. His response was dry. Wouldn't be a real apocalypse without you leading the charge. Try not to die before I get there. The elevator groaned as it ascended, passing through strata of earth until light spilled in from the cracked sky. When the doors opened, she stepped into the ruins of Westminster, what little remained of it. The once grand city was now a battlefield. Chimeras fought in the streets, their movements blurs of light and steel. Alien walkers strode between shattered monuments, firing lances of plasma that turned stone to vapor. The air shimmered with heat, smoke, and the metallic tang of blood. Alara activated her visor and sprinted into the chaos. A Varkan trooper aimed for her. She dropped low, sliding beneath its rifle and slashing her blade across its chest. The creature fell without a sound. "Rian!" she called through the link. "Status! South line collapsing. We can't hold much longer. Fall back to the river. Draw them in. I'll trigger the traps." She reached a control node hidden within the remains of a subway entrance. With one command, the ground beneath the invading line detonated. The earth tore apart, swallowing dozens of alien vehicles in a surge of fire. The explosion threw Alara backward, dust choking her lungs, but she didn't slow. Through the smoke, Rian emerged, armor scorched, eyes burning gold. "Nice timing," he said. "Still think extinction would have been honest?" she shot back. He gave a small, bitter smile. "Starting to think survival's better." Their shared look said everything, no forgiveness, but understanding. By midnight the battle reached its peak. Earth's cities burned brighter than any star. The human defense grid was collapsing, yet the Varkan advance slowed. They had expected the dying remnants of a species. What they faced were monsters born from extinction. Still, numbers mattered. For every alien ship destroyed, 10 more filled the sky. Alara retreated to the command node atop a ruined tower overlooking the river. From there, she could see the fleet in orbit, massive as continents. She activated the final stage of the Aegis core, the buried weapon beneath the planet's crust, a last legacy of humanity's desperation. A holographic interface shimmered before her, displaying the charging progress, 87%. It would take minutes more, maybe too many. Rian climbed beside her, breathing hard. "If that thing works, it'll fry everything, including us." "I know." He stared at her. "You'd kill what's left of us?" Alara turned to the sky. "If it means they never come back." He shook his head, but there was no anger, only acceptance. "You always said monsters protect what they love. Guess this is what you meant." The comms buzzed again. The AI's voice crackled through static. "Incoming transmission. Source identified as High Regent Xylan." Alara's eyes narrowed. "Put him through." The image that materialized above the tower was vast and sharp. Xylan's crystalline form glowed faintly under alien starlight. "You've fought well, Commander," he said, voice calm, almost admiring. "You have become efficient killers. But that does not make you alive." Alara's voice was steady. "Neither does obedience." Xylan's expression didn't change. "This is your final chance. Surrender Earth. I will preserve your species, genetically catalogued, recorded, perfected." She almost laughed. "You destroyed our world, murdered our children, and now you talk about preservation? You are unstable, chaotic, diseased," he replied. "Mercy is the logical end." Alara stepped closer to the projection. "Then let me show you what chaos can do." She cut the transmission. The Aegis core's progress bar hit 100%. The ground trembled, a deep vibration spreading across the planet. In orbit, alien sensors began to spike in alarm. "Now or never," Rian muttered. Alara placed her palm on the console. "For Earth," she said softly. "For humanity," Rian answered. She triggered the sequence. The planet roared. A surge of blinding light erupted from Earth's poles, spreading like veins of lightning through the atmosphere. The pulse reached orbit in seconds, an electromagnetic storm so vast it drowned the stars. Varkan ships ignited one by one, their systems overloading, their engines collapsing into blue fire. The fleet disintegrated under its own brilliance. On the ground, every machine screamed with feedback. Power grids melted, metal warped, and then silence. When the light faded, the sky was empty. Alara stood amid the ruins, her armor flickering. Smoke curled around her as she looked up at the fading aurora, the last breath of the Aegis core. Rian lay nearby, barely conscious, his armor half fused to his skin. Still alive? She asked. Barely, he rasped. Was it worth it? Elara gazed at the darkened heavens. Ask me when they don't come back. He gave a dry laugh that turned into a cough. You always did like the hard way. She knelt beside him. It's the only way humans ever learned. Together, they watched the first light of dawn break through the clouds. The red sky began to soften, streaks of pale gold cutting through the ash. Around them, survivors crawled from the rubble, human soldiers, chimeras, even unenhanced civilians who had hidden through the chaos. For the first time in a century, Earth was quiet. Rian whispered, We won. Elara shook her head slowly. No. We endured. She stood, surveying the ruined horizon. The world was broken, but it lived. The cost had been unbearable, yet the result undeniable. Humanity had risen, not pure, not perfect, but unextinguished. As she turned toward the east, the morning sun caught the silver in her eyes. She whispered to the wind, 3 billion dead. 10 billion more will remember why they should have left us buried. The monsters of Earth had saved their home, and the galaxy would never forget their roar.